just after 7, so I'll call the meeting to order. Before we get started, let's introduce everyone on this meeting. I'm Sandy Brock. When I call your name, please confirm you can hear me by verifying that you are present. And I'll start with the commissioners. Travis,
I'm here.
Jonathan,
Present.
thank you, and Emily.
I'm here.
And Patrick's not here tonight, so okay. Then we'll go through staff. Leah
I'm here.
and Jan.
Present.
Thank you. This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, as most recently extended on March 29th, 2023. Access information for the public has been provided on the town website. The meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. This is done on a phone by pressing *6. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on agenda. Please note that you will not have screen sharing privileges, but staff can display any visuals per your cue. During periods of public comment, participants must use the raise hand icon in the Zoom menu bar to indicate they would like to speak. This is done on a phone by pressing *9 and then *6 to unmute when you are called on. Participants who raise their hand will be recognized one at a time and will be promoted to speak. Finally, each vote taken will be conducted by a roll call vote. As a reminder, the Commission is concerned with state and town wetlands and stormwater regulations. Concerns outside of this purview need to be addressed to the appropriate boards. For example, road conditions must be addressed by the Select Board, and traffic concerns must be addressed with the Planning Board. All right. It is 7:04. What type of things can we take care of before the first public hearing at 7:15?
We can start going down the action items, or you could do the 2 continuations.
Let's start with the 2 continuations off the bat. Okay. Okay. So 48 McGill Drive.
42, yeah.
42, sorry. 42. So pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Grafton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon the request for determination of applicability for tree removal at 42 McGill Drive. The applicant has requested a continuance to July 16th. Do I have a motion to continue this hearing until July 16th?
Reminder, I'm recusing myself because I'm in a butter to all things Highfields.
All right, thank you very much.
Lost my place in the agenda here. This is
So-
42 McGill Drive.
Correct.
Motion to continue 42 McGill Drive to our next meeting.
Good.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote to continue the hearing to July 16th. Emily,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
and Travis, you can just recuse.
I have recused myself.
Thank you. And then I am also a yes. This hearing has been continued to July 16th. Okay. Which is the other one that's been continued?
5 Millennium.
Oh, okay. Oh, you mean the capitalized continuance on here? Okay. It's been a long day. All right. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Stormwater Bylaw permit and application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of a multifamily residence at 5 Millennium Drive. The Applicant has requested a continuance to July 16th. Do I hear a motion?
I'm off mute, so I'll move to continue the hearing for 5 Millennium Drive.
And do I have a second?
Second.
A motion, a second, roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes, and that public hearing is continued to July 17th. Okay,
16.
16th. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Thought I was beginning to get into the groove here, but I'm not. Okay. Other action items that we could get to?
If we start at the top of the list, we have an extension request for Bull Meadow subdivision.
Mhm.
They're nearly done. They have a punch list left. They did just do plantings in their replication area this growing season, so it'll have to be this growing season and next to make sure it achieves 75% success. But their order does expire in July. They previously had it extended for 3 years, as well as they had some COVID tolling. But they're looking for just 1 more year so they can finish it up. So I recommend granting a 1-year extension.
Seems reasonable based on the fact that they're almost done. A quick question, Leah. I know that, you do the 2 growing seasons, and so that would be a minimum through the fall or whatever. If all we're waiting for is a growing season, does that still have to happen within the term of the order of conditions?
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna give a certificate of compliance with that outstanding, because that's
What-
how we,
Yeah.
that's how we're able to require more plantings. Is that your question, or am I not answering?
No, I think I'm just wondering if, I have no problem. We'll continue this and everything. Excuse me, extend it. But I'm just curious if we were in a case where someone didn't proactively come in front of us and the only thing outstanding was a planting, if that would create a problem. But we can answer that on a separate time. You can think about it.
Okay.
It's not germane to this particular request. So a request for for an extension for Bull Meadow subdivision. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to continue to extend the Bull Meadow subdivision permit
For 1 year.
order of
Right.
conditions for 1 year.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just quickly go around if anyone has any questions, just to make sure that there's no discussion here. Emily, any questions on this?
No questions. Thank you.
Travis,
Nope.
Jonathan?
No questions.
I also have no questions, so we'll do a roll call vote. You're up on the board, so Jonathan,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion passes, or the motion for the extension passes. We can't have any more extensions tonight, Leah. This is tripping us up.
We have 1 more.
All right. That would be the next one. Oh, for the next one's extension, another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Leah.
This is 5 Stratton Road, formerly part of 7. It was carved off of the tennis court, tennis club, whatever they're called over there, to build a single family house. So construction was delayed a little bit. They had to revise the plan to meet zoning requirements. They're currently underway, expected to finish by January of this coming 2025. But this order expires in October, so they're asking for 1 year as well. It's their first request, so I recommend granting a 1-year extension.
Okay. I will quickly go around and see if anyone has a discussion on this. Emily,
No. No questions. Thank you.
Jonathan,
No, don't have any.
Travis.
No, I'm good.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Is there a reason why we're not doing 3 years, or they requested only 1 year?
They requested 1, they plan to be done in January.
Okay. Do I have a motion? for the extension of the order of conditions?
I'll move to extend the order of conditions for 1 year for 5 Stratton Road.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Travis?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries for the extension. Got 2 minutes. Request for certificate of compliance?
Yeah, so 27 Upton Street is the one before us now, under 17 and 27 Upton Street, to redevelop the old DPW site. So this was a really old order, for when they built the salt shed. We have very limited information on it, but it was recorded, so it does need a certificate of compliance to close it out, from appearing on a title search. That salt
Okay.
shed is gonna be demolished under the new proposal that is going to be presenting later this evening. So I recommend issuing a certificate of compliance so we can get that one off the books.
Okay, very good. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to issue the certificate of compliance for 27 Upton Street, the old salt shed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for certificate of compliance for an old order of conditions for 27 Upton Street. Okay. Roll call vote. Travis?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
And Jonathan?
Yes.
I am also a yes. Motion carries. I've got 1 minute. Yeah. The next one quick or,
Yeah, we can do one more.
okay,
6 White Birch Lane is another request for certificate of compliance. It's an old order for when their house was built. We have an as-built plan now, everything's done, everything is stable. I recommend issuing the certificate of compliance.
all right, thank you. When you say old, is it 5 years old, 10 years old? I don't know, I'm not looking for exact date.
I don't have an exact date, but it's a DEP number in the 500s and we're in the thousands now.
Okay, gives me a sense of how long it's been out there, so very
Yeah.
good. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to close out the certificate of compliance for 6 White Birch Lane.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, roll call vote. Emily?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
I am also a yes, the motion carries to issue the certificate of compliance for 6 White Birch. All right, 7:15. Back to the beginning. All right, seeing that at 7:15, pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a request for determination of applicability for the construction of a front porch at 24 Taft Mill Road. And who's here to speak to that?
I am, guys. Jay Gallant, I'm the architect working with Tom and Linda Coonan, who looks like they're here also.
You have the floor, sir.
So thank you. So this is a pretty straightforward project. It's a 2-story house with a garage attached that was built. We have plans. Awesome. All right. Well, that kind of tells the story. So the garage is on the the west side of the house, and there's obviously a wetland on the east side. And what you see there is labeled as a 36 high stone retaining wall, which goes from the surface of the front yard where the porch that's shaded is proposed up, and the wetlands is above. The wetland area is above the yard. So all of our, it's not going to be any disturbance. First of all, the porch is going to be built with Technometal post foundations, which is the helical piers that screw into the ground. So there's no disturbance, and we're going to be 44, little over 44 feet from the wetland, and which is beyond the no disturb zone and below the existing stone wall. So it is really, I just don't really see any potential for any disturbance whatsoever. So I don't have much else to say. Any questions, or if you want to talk about it some more?
All right, appreciate that. We'll go first around the commission to see if anyone has questions, and then we'll open up to the public. So first, commission members, Jonathan, any questions on this?
No, it seems pretty straightforward.
And Emily, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
And Travis?
No, no
Okay.
questions.
I have one quick one, and it's just not specifically shown on this. Where did you get the wetlands delineation from? Is that an approximate one, or was that delineated in the field?
It was delineated when the property was developed. So let's see, in 2009 is when the entire subdivision was planned out. I believe that's when it was flagged. I don't really know any more than that.
And that's fine. It's really just because when we vote on this, we want to make sure we're voting on it appropriately. That particular wetlands line is not valid any longer. However, it's not something that we're looking that we feel that it needs to be redelineated, and our agent's gone out there anyway. So,
Good.
and I just want to make sure that we indicate that when we do a vote on this, that we're not approving this particular line at this time. It's more just we'll call it approximate, and it's based on what you just described. Leah, any other comments?
I was just gonna suggest one condition that construction equipment and activity shall not go past the retaining wall, as I'm sure they planned.
Okay. At this point here, I'll open up if there is anyone on the public that has any comments or questions about 24 Taft Mill Road. Please just raise your hand and you'll be recognized as we kind of wait for anyone as far as public attendees. If anyone has any questions, please ask. And in the meantime, we'll just take care of some paperwork type of stuff. Okay. So, condition. Okay. Go around to the commissioners. Are there any other type of conditions other than the one that Leah suggested? Emily,
Nope,
Travis,
Nope.
and Jonathan.
No, nothing.
And just the finding is that it's an approximate wetlands. Okay. Anyone, Leah or Jan from the public?
Nothing from the public.
Okay, great. So at this point, we'll move to, so this is, let me just get back here. So this is a request for determination, just for the applicant's understanding. We're going to have a motion and make a vote to actually close the hearing and issue a negative determination. Just as clarification, you probably already know this, a negative determination is just simply saying you do not need a notice of intent and your actually permitting process basically ends at this point. If you get a positive determination, then you would have to go for a full notice of intent. So what this motion is going to be discussing is that to issue a negative determination, just for clarification. All right. So having said that, do I have a motion to close the hearing and issue a negative determination with the condition that was proposed here of that no equipment can go past the retaining wall, the existing retaining wall, and also to have a finding that the wetlands is approximate.
So moved.
Thank you. Second,
second,
a motion is second. Roll call vote. Emily,
yes,
Travis. Sorry, I saw you
Yes.
take a drink and I asked. That was not
Good
good.
timing. Yes.
Yeah. And Jonathan.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That means the motion passes and it's a negative determination.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Leah, we are ahead of schedule. We have another 8 minutes to our next hearing. Should we go back to,
Action
items.
items? Yeah.
Yep. all right, so next one up is a request to reissue the certificate of compliance.
Yep, these received certificates of compliance in the past that were either not recorded or were recorded at the registry but need some clarification because of notes that appeared on them. So these are for Art Lot Acres, and I recommend reissuing complete certificates of compliance so they can clean that up with the registry.
So this, and again, I think we've talked about this before. When we get asked to reissue, there is no fee or anything for you to go through the paperwork and do it, correct?
Correct.
And what's the type of effort to do that? I mean, it's
It
complicated, yeah.
it varies a little bit because if it's more recent, we can usually just get the page into DocuSign a lot easier and have you guys put signatures on it. If it's really old, sometimes we have to recreate one.
Okay,
But it's on my list of things we can consider when we're revising regs and fee
Okay.
schedules and stuff.
all right, very good. All right, so we have a request for reissue a certificate of compliance. Quick round. Does anyone have any questions? Emily,
No questions.
Jonathan,
No questions.
Travis,
Nope, no questions.
and do I have a motion to reissue the certificate of compliance?
Sure, I'll move to reissue the certificate of compliance for Art Lot Acres.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
yes.
and Travis.
Yes.
I am also a yes. Motion carries. Okay, we have 6 minutes left. Next one up.
So we had a conservation land usage authorization request come in. It was time sensitive, so I did go ahead and sign it, and I'm asking you guys to ratify it this evening. It's for the Native Plant Trust for Hassanemet Woods. They wanted to do a survey of large world pogonia, also known as purple five-leaf orchid. The populations and habitat that are out there, collect some photos and data. They're not taking any specimens, and it was only like a handful of people, 3 people, 3 cars, a 1-day survey, but they had to get out there before June 22 because of when that plant is best visible. So I signed that for them on May 31st, and I'm just asking for ratification on that.
Sounds good. Do I have a motion?
What am I making a
So,
motion for?
the motion would be to
Ratify
ratify.
usage?
Yep, authorization.
Okay.
So this is like
Yeah.
when the Boy Scouts do their camp out or
Mm,
anything. This is just a plant survey, and it was doing it kind of retroactively. You have any
So I'll
other
move
questions?
to, oh, no, I don't. I'll
Okay.
move to ratify the conservation usage for Hassanemet Woods.
All right, sounds good. Do I have a second?
Second,
I'll do quickly. Emily, any questions on this?
no questions.
And Jonathan, any questions on this?
No, no questions.
Okay, roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
I am also a yes, and that usage authorization has been ratified. All right, 3 minutes.
The last action item should fit.
Okay,
So this was an emergency certification for 60 and 63 Main Street. Where the old Fisherville Mill was. They had some animal activity, probably a beaver, caused a breach in the coffer dam that they have in the canal down there. That coffer dam is responsible for keeping the water level in the canal higher than the water level in the river, which keeps the contamination plume in check
Okay.
under their DEP permits. So, and also prevents it from reaching South Grafton Water District downstream. So they needed an emergency certification to go ahead and repair the breach in that cofferdam, which they're looking to do by installing sandbags that will be reinforced with wooden stakes. They're going to be doing it by hand. I issued this on the 10th of June. They have to be done by the 10th of July because they get 30 days. And so I'm just looking for another ratification, this time of an emergency certification.
All right. Seems fairly straightforward to me. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to ratify the emergency certification for 60 and 63 Main Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I will quickly go through this. If anyone has questions on this, Travis,
No.
Emily,
No, no questions.
Jonathan.
Thank you.
thank you. Jonathan?
No questions.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. We'll do a roll call vote now. I also had no questions. Roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries and we ratified the emergency certification. Got 1 minute left here. Anything left?
Nope.
Okay, so we can wait the 30 seconds till we get this. Switch back.
Didn't expect to fit all that in.
Neither did I. When I saw the list, I was like, oh, this will take a little while. All right. Excuse me. All right, seeing that it's 7:30. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent and application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the repair of retaining wall at 98 Worcester Street, 5 and 8 Doris Drive. And who is here to speak to this?
Robert Sims, 111 Fowler Road, Northbridge, Mass. Comprehensive Environmental, representing the Grafton Water District.
You have the floor, sir.
So I think the business manager was trying to log in. I don't know if he's in the queue waiting, or he didn't get he wasn't on the invite, but he was going to try and sign it. I don't know if he's
Okay, yeah.
sitting there.
Jan
or
will
not.
Jan will check.
Okay.
Is it Matt Pearson?
Yes.
Okay, yep, he's coming in as panelist.
Okay.
Good evening. This is Matt Pearson.
All right. Whoever's going to do the presentation, please go ahead and start.
All right. So we're proposing this work along the access road to 98 Worcester Street, the water treatment plant behind Stop and Shop. We have an access easement through the Stop and Shop parking lot, but there's also a back entrance that comes down towards the dead end of Doris Drive. When the development was built along the residential side of Axtell Brook, on the downstream side of the crossing, I don't know how it's best to describe them. They're large, like 4-inch concrete panels that were to act as a retaining wall to separate the creek and the yards at number 8 and number 5 and others in the development. And they're starting to fail. At least the first 2 sections downstream of the culvert are starting to fail. And we would like to go in and replace those with more of the large cement blocks, like the 2 by 1 by 4 foot long blocks, and make a much more permanent structure than these retaining walls. I'm not sure if if Jan has been out there or not, but in 1978 they were probably great. Now they're not. So one of the things we need to do with that is the culvert that comes underneath the access road is a twin barrel piped culvert. The 24-inch pipes on either side. We'd like to divert the water over towards the other pipe so that we'll be able to work in the dry. The plan shows, on the, I guess that would be the east side of the road, the access road, more of like large sandbags or something of that nature, and same thing on the downstream side to create an area that would be dry. That's the extreme. We would like to do smaller disturbance than that, and a lot of that is driven by how much water there is at the time when we go to do it. We one of the short-term easiest plan is to just divert the water as it comes out of the downstream side with a 4 to 6 inch riprap, and then pump any water that does seep through so that we're able to work in the dry. And we have the basin, the receiving basin up on the upland side of the existing retaining wall, and that would go through that chamber and then filter back down into the brook. So we're going to go down probably, I think it's like 2 feet underwater. So the primary dewatering part of this would be active until we laid the first or second layer of block, and then once that occurs, where we won't be working in the wet anymore, so we could be able to let the water run through like it normally would. And either we would still leave the protection up, but it wouldn't be as critical for it to maintain a dry work zone, because we'd already be building up out of the water. It's about a 10-foot high wall that's there now, and we'd be going back to the same grade. Any excavation we would, we could store on site. It is a dead end road. We have a lot of room to work with down there, and in situ stuff going back. All of the criteria that are best for the area, for working in this kind of area. And with it's pretty dry now. We know we have a 30-day appeal period and other things. We also had received notice from Natural Heritage that there was, we're in kind of the edge of a wood turtle area, and they're currently reviewing what they have to get back to us with any kind of turtle protection plan or time frame of when we could work without a plan. It's in town. I'm sure you guys are really familiar with the issues with that. So speaking with contractors that would do this work, we're looking at probably 2 weeks of total work from start to finish. Some setup on the water control in the beginning and the erosion protection, and then once we get the old panels out of there, we can start laying the blocks in. And the first row will probably be the worst, because we'll be working below grade, and then once we get above grade, they should fly right along. So
Okay. Can you just briefly go, looking at this plan, is actually tell me the actual location of the retaining wall? Are you talking the head walls?
Yeah, if you look on the lower side of the page, where the like in the lower middle, where the pump water discharge area is, up on by number 5 Doris. So it's on that side. It's
Okay.
on the residential side of the downstream side of that
Okay,
crossing.
I finally found the note on it. Okay.
Okay, and they continue further down, but the stream kind of peels away from the walls as you get past the the area we're going to work. So the ones after it are in better shape, just because they're not exposed to water going by and putting wear on the concrete and taking fines away and stuff like that. So we're only going to do a little piece of it, because the other ones are still in reasonable shape. In the creek pulls away.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add, or?
We did do a boring at this location, and you know, since there's a well nearby, we expected there to be kind of a generic sand and gravel, coarse sand and gravel, which is exactly what we found. We didn't do any compression testing, but we're, you know, with 10 feet of concrete, you're looking at about 1,500 pounds per square foot, which it should easily handle that with the information from the borings that we got, that it's, you know, provides a suitable stability, so it's not going to sink or go anywhere. The wetlands were flagged by a contractor that was working for the water district that's also doing work at the well, which is to the left of the stream. So the district got them to do both at the same time. So Matt would have better information on who did that. We just got the file from them, but I don't know if that was Grazer.
Yeah, if I can say a few things.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah, so as you probably know, I've worked for the water district for over 30 years, and you know, this brook typically dries up when the ash dry. The only thing is, this is an ongoing safety hazard with the panels slipping into the brook, so to speak. So we're hoping to get it done, you know, this summer. Other than that, I have no other comments. I guess it's pretty simple construction project. It's even though it looks difficult.
Okay. All right. If that's it, we'll first start with Leah. Do you have any comments, or what's your review of this particular
Sure.
project?
So as was mentioned, it's within mapped habitat, so we are waiting on NHESP and what their feedback is gonna be. Axtell Brook is also a cold water fishery, so one of the things that would have to be done, which I think they meet, is that diversions of water need to not harm the fish. This one is, he said, about 2, maybe 3 weeks long, and they're leaving the western pipe open, so I think we're okay there. They did request a waiver for work in the no disturb just by nature of the project. We're also waiting on their DEP number and comments.
Okay.
And the only other thing I had is that there will be 80 feet of permanent impacts to BLSF, and I think we need that broken down by elevation. But that's the only other outstanding item I have.
Well, I
Okay.
know I mean, we're going to put the face of the new wall with the face of the old wall, which has water going right up to it. So I'm not sure where we would, you know, what we would, it seems like creating any replication here would cause more damage than harm, than good, I guess. I'm not real sure what we need to do to satisfy your comment, I guess.
So the 80, a lot of what you have in your NOI for impacts is temporary, and then, you know, you're putting back in kind. But it did mention 80 feet of permanent BLSF impacts. So is that different from, you know, everything else is being constructed basically 1 for 1, what was there to what will be there? But 80 feet were called out as permanent impacts.
Okay. Well, we've got some time, so I'll have to go back and look at that and come up with a
Yeah, it
response.
doesn't seem.
It's just a clarification on what you meant by that impact, so that we can just review it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go around with the commissioners to see if anyone has any questions. Jonathan, any questions on this?
Oh, I don't have any questions on it.
All right, Travis.
So what's the total impact if it's 80 feet? What's the width?
So that's a good question. I want to go back to usually we do a spreadsheet where we put all this stuff together, and I didn't, I don't have that, being at home. I'm
Okay.
not able
I mean,
to
if it's
access it right now, but
80
really-
feet by 1 feet, that's only 80 square feet. But if it's like 80 by 200 feet, that's different.
yeah,
Just curious what that total is.
yeah. I'm thinking it was it was going to include the disruption upstream and downstream, but
There's really
I have
no
to
net
check
loss.
that. I'm not positive of that, but I know downstream, the water is right up to the wall, so it wouldn't have made any sense to do that, to include that. I'll have to check. I'm
Yeah,
not sure
just-
off the top of my head.
Yeah, just confirm the face of the wall is in the same place as the existing face of the wall.
Yeah,
And if you
it might. Well, anyway, I could make some supposition, but it might have been the
Yeah.
surface area of the wall, that it's 30 feet long and 2.5 feet wide. It might have been that. I'll have to check.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
just,
then
yeah.
the temporary impacts, and maybe we'll get into this, Leah, in the next hearing if this has to be continued. But are they going to be like everything's going to be restored to existing conditions? Is that the idea, Leah, as far as
Absolutely.
you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then this one, I could not get this to open before the hearing, so I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at, but there's no restrictions out there, like if I wanted to stop by and look at it, because it's the water district.
If you go down Doris Drive, you're right there. There is
I'm good.
a
Okay.
lock fence between the two, but if you go down to Doris,
I'll bring my
Drive,
bolt cutters if that's okay. That's it, Sandy. I'm done.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Travis. Jonathan, any questions?
Nope, no.
Emily.
No questions.
Okay, I just have a couple of quick ones. I think, and again, we're going to end up continuing this. We don't have a DEP number. First, at this point, I'm just going to ask if anyone in the public has any questions or comments. Please raise your hand, and as we continue on, we will look for that hand to be raised, and if there is, we will ask you to join us. But in the meantime, my questions really are more around just constructability and how it's going to get constructed. So looking at your sections and so forth, you have a note on here indicating that the actual design, if it's a 10-foot high retaining wall, that's a structure. It needs to be designed by a professional engineer. It needs to be a structural engineer. You mentioned on here that the retaining wall will be designed by the manufacturer. And so just as you go through this, we will require, as far as the condition goes, that we get a stamp drawing of the retaining wall. And as you know, it's the manufacturers, that's a standard service they do. And the reality is that you're not going to get that stamp plan until you actually buy a wall. So from our perspective, we'll do it as a condition, but just understand that when you're going from kind of a 70s era precast system that was more of slabs, and now you're going depending upon the type of wall you get, you're going to be looking at, if you're going for the large block kind of ready walk type of walls, you're going to have at 10 feet, you can't get around not having tiebacks into the soil, the geogrids into the soil, which means your excavation is going to go anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 feet into the the embankment that you're going up against. So just think about those things and constructability of that. There are a wide variety of walls out there, but just understand that the amount of impact and wall and excavation you may do might be a little bit more than you think of by just this kind of general diagram that we have. And so you get an actual design, you'll have to make sure that the face of the wall is equal to what's out there now. So I don't know if you've looked at any of the specifics of the different modular block walls yet. Just, I guess my only caution is that if all of a sudden you go with a large block wall and you find out you have to go into the slope, that you're not going to move the face of the wall up, because that would be an impact. So be one thing to think about.
Yeah, we would, the entire intent is to put the face back in the same place, so we're not losing any
Right.
ground. And then as a PE, your responsible charges for the things that you know how to do. And I'm not a structural engineer. I don't even play one on TV. So, we're usually pretty clear about, you have to have a stamp. I mean, we do it often,
Right.
pump stations or whatever. It's pretty standard for us to require a contractor to provide a stamp. I talked with another contractor today, and he said the same thing. He goes, well, you're going to need a stamp plan, right? And I'm like, Yes, I am.
Yeah.
And not stamped by me.
And basically, the few courses I had in college on structural engineering does not make me a structural engineer, although I've been a professional engineer for many years. Gotcha. This is more just to make sure that we put this in the order of conditions so that we get the proper paperwork. It's not.
Yeah. No,
like-
yeah, we would want that paperwork as well for covering ourselves, so.
Yeah, I'm just think you might be surprised with the tiebacks and the geo grids going into the side slope. So you just want to
Yeah.
take a look at that. You may find out it's more work on the construction side than you maybe have anticipated. That was really my only question and really the only ask for that. Other than that, Jan, anything from the public?
Nothing from the public.
All right, thank you very much. So just back to the applicant and their representative, we do not have a DEP number. We can't really have much more further discussions on this. I would ask you if you have any other questions for us, and hopefully we'll continue it, and then we can, get whatever questions we have resolved next time. Do you have any
Yep.
questions for the commission?
No, I mean, I don't have any now. I mean, I'll look into where the 80 square foot or the 80-foot number came from and get back to Jan with that so I can circle back to you guys.
Okay.
And then, yeah, no, we understand the rest that's going on. And for some reason, the Natural Heritage replied back to me, but they didn't include Jan on the circulation. So anything I've gotten from Natural Heritage, I've just forwarded to her, so she's in the loop. So.
And that's fine. And just to be specific, you are requesting a continuance to the next meeting, which is
Correct.
July
We
6th.
will request a continuance to the next meeting to wait for a DEP file number, notification of something from Natural Heritage, and we'll provide an answer on the 80-foot BLSF discussion.
All right, that's the next hearings at July 16th. Leah, anything else I missed?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, quick around the commissioners, if there's any other questions. Emily,
No questions, thank you.
Jonathan,
Would we want to vote on the waiver request now, or do we want to wait until everything is fine, or the next meeting, or whenever it gets final?
Leah, we can do that now.
Just didn't know.
Either way, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. And Travis, any other comments or questions at this time?
Nope.
Okay. So what we can do, this is for the applicant. What we can do is do a quick motion and a vote on the request for a waiver for work in the no disturb, which obviously it's where the existing wall is, so there's no way around that. Would you like us to make that motion today?
Please.
All right,
I mean,
great.
you're ahead of schedule, so we might as well, right?
Yeah. So do I have a motion on the waiver request for work in the no disturb?
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver request for work within the no disturb for 98 Worcester Street, 5 and 8 Doris Drive, Grafton Water District retaining wall replacement project.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second,
A motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Emily,
yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
and Travis.
Yes.
I'm also a yes, so that excuse me, the motion on the waivers has passed, and we need one more motion, and that is to continue this hearing until July 16th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have that. Do I have a second?
Second,
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. We will see you in July.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, Leah, what's going on with the next meeting? The next hearing is not till 8:30.
Correct, because they are they're with Shrewsbury this evening
Okay.
as well. So we can do 17 and 27 Upton in between.
Okay. All right, here we go. Sounds like a plan. So here we go. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Grafton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Stormwater Bylaw permit and application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of an apartment complex at 17 and 27 Upton Street. And who's here for that?
That would be me, Jean Christie with Ty and Bond. And I
You're
think
up.
John Grant will be joining us. You surprised me with fitting us in right now, so I had to just send him a quick note, tell him to jump on. But
That's okay.
so there's been quite a bit that's happened since the last time we met, and I'm excited to talk about it. You know, the first being that we did receive our Mass DEP file number yesterday. And along with that came a number of comments. We sent a response to those comments to Mass DEP and to Leanne Jan earlier today. Those comments kind of focused on a couple things, being the boardwalks, plank or decking spacing, height over the existing grade, just getting a little more detail on what kind of light is expected underneath the boardwalk. So we provided some information on that. And I know the commission may not have seen any of that yet, so I'm just giving this for information. They asked about wetland replication, and it appears that they may not have seen the supplemental information we sent a couple meetings ago, kind of clarifying some of that information. So we pointed them in that direction. They looked for some additional TSS removal documentation, which we included in our response. And kind of finally, they want to make sure that a water quality cert wasn't required, which it's not at this time or at all. We also received our civil stormwater peer review comments a couple weeks ago. And last week, we were able to provide a response to those comments back to Graves Engineering, and updated some drawings in the stormwater report with a couple of small things pertinent to this, just to conservation's focus here. The stormwater was generally good. We didn't have to change anything in terms of our approach to stormwater management. We're still using pervious pavers and an infiltration basin to manage stormwater runoff. The comments about stormwater were really focused on the modeling piece of it. So we, revised the entire model based on Graves' suggestions and recommendations, and got that back to them. The changes in the model didn't change anything in terms of, meeting any of the performance standards for Mass DEP or the town. One piece that did come up with Graves review was they noted that on our existing conditions plan, and this is relative to the town's stormwater bylaw, that we didn't include meets and bounds in the property line. And this wasn't something that we collected in terms of survey back when we did the survey for this project, since it was a town-owned parcel, at the time. We weren't sure it was required at that time. So we're going to request that the commission consider a waiver of that requirement, or even a condition of that requirement, and provide it, maybe at a later date when we're a little further along. So with our issuance of the response to comments from Graves, we issued a draft set of drawings that showed couple changes. I don't know if Jan, you're able to pull those up. A couple things I wanted to point out in our layout is, in the planning board meeting, we talked about, getting rid of the pickleball courts, and modifying some of our amenity space outside, which meant we relocated the dog run. And I don't know if I told anybody to do this all last time. What that means is that we are able to eliminate the dog run that was on the left side of the building in the northwest corner. That allowed us to pull in our impacts away from the wetland, to just push everything towards the building and squeeze that up a little bit. So that was the first step there. You can kind of see it a little bit on the left-hand side of the building, that we eliminated the dog run and pushed things in. What else did I have on there? The other piece of information that we provided to the commission last week was in our cover letter. One of the things that somebody had requested previously was a a comparison of existing to proposed in terms of like surface treatments. You know, where it's impervious today, gravel today, building today versus what's going to happen under proposed conditions in each of the 25-foot no disturb and the 100-foot no buffer zone. And I'm trying to find where I have this. The couple of things that were interesting to me when we did this tabulation is that under, you know, existing conditions to proposed conditions, we're removing all the gravel within the 100-foot buffer zone. And in place of that, we are, while we're doing some of these impervious things, such as, you know, the pavers in the back for the amenity spaces, the stone dust path, some of the parking areas, we're increasing vegetation within the 100-foot buffer zone too, which was interesting. This is also the case in the 25-foot no disturb as well. So I do suggest everybody take a look at the cover letter that we had sent that has those two tables on it. I think it breaks it down really nicely to understand what's happening within each of those resource areas. Let's see. In addition, some other information that we provided was a more detailed summary of the remediation efforts that we're expecting to do as part of the lead removal from the existing facility. Come up with tanks that need to be removed. I hope, you know, we provided a separate memo for that to document that a little bit more to include in this notice of intent. And then, as we heard earlier today, the previous open order of conditions has been addressed. So thank you to the town for assisting with that one. So yeah, at this point, we're waiting on, you know, Graves to provide a response to our response to them. I don't foresee any additional plan changes required at this point. What we've done is these drawings that the commission has today were kind of an interim version. We are preparing a final set of drawings to issue to the planning board tomorrow, which we're also going to submit to the Conservation Commission, so you have your final set stamped versions. They're really not much different than this. I think that was my quick summary. It was really quick. I hope I didn't go too fast. So I don't know if there's any questions on any of these things.
We'll go around and get any other questions, but Leah, any updates on your review?
I do want to talk through lighting on the boardwalk. I think we started to talk about it last time. With the photometric plan. Is that something you want to go into now, Sandy?
Yeah, why don't we just jump right into that?
Okay. So we had a photometric plan, and I think Jean spoke a little bit to what the lighting on the boardwalk is going to be like last time. Maybe if you can just take us through that again. Just basically the concern would be extra lighting in the wetland, and just trying to avoid that with whether we put conditions on or whether it's already designed that way now. I just want to get into those details.
Sure. So the photometric plan that we provided isn't going to give you the best information. So Jan, if you could go to, I think it's probably the last sheet in this set. It will have a detail on it of the boardwalk, you know, a section of the boardwalk. And it shows that on our posts of the boardwalk is where we have, oh, it's the second to the last sheet. Yeah. So actually this doesn't quite show it, does it? All right, I may have to check on that one. The point is, if you zoom in on that detail again, Jan, on the posts here below the railing is where we'll have downward facing light, and the light's going to shine into the boardwalk, and it's not going to you know, on posts. It's going to be mounted on the posts. Sorry, I'll take that back. Not poles, but mounted onto the posts of the boardwalk, of the railing of the boardwalk. So they're smaller lights. They're not illuminating out and up. They're illuminating down and concentrated. They we can probably talk to the lighting consultants about making sure that there's some, you know, the shielding behind it so that light isn't spilling into the wetland and it's just focused on the boardwalk.
And just a quick question on that. how are these lights going to be activated? Is it a timer? Is it motion detection?
I don't think we have that quite figured out yet. Maybe up for discussion. I would assume it's gonna be on a timer based on when sunset is. But I don't know. I don't know the answer actually.
Again, just things to consider, you know, if it's on a motion detector type of
Yeah.
thing, then it's only going to be activated when someone, I understand that you can always have false activations if you have um, wildlife or other stuff, but, you know, typically set up for certain height humans
Right.
to activate it. I'm just thinking that might be less of a impact on the wetlands if it's, you know, obviously there's a lot of different ways to do the lighting where it maybe come on at you know sunset, but if it's not active for X number of minutes, it can turn off and then get turned back. I'm just thinking to minimize to Leah's
Right.
question, to minimize the amount of time it's on, but still be functional to whoever's there.
John, Grant, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's an initial safety concern. I mean, if you do have it activated by motion, you probably want to have it activated further up the deck so that you can see if someone's, you know, standing on that walkway, you know. Usually these are basically dusk to dawn sort of light activations. Is it just that one strip you'd be interested in having on a motion detector delay?
Yeah, it
Sandra?
would be within the wetlands and going over the wetlands. I mean, that's really our main concern. Um,
Okay.
and just not have it lit up. I mean, if someone's on the,
For the rest of can you show the site plan again, Gene? That's why I get this straight so I can explain it to the engineer. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
let's see
probably
that.
the overall.
Yeah.
Zoom in on the. Yep, 201.
So on the parking lot and the walkway all the way up to the wetlands, we'd be good to leave that on dusk to dawn, right?
I mean, that's if it's outside of our jurisdiction and it's within your complex, I'm not gonna, you know, say it's whatever. I mean, I mean, it's very common nowadays to have everything activated and it doesn't, you know, um, that's just for energy saving and other things. But really our concern is the boardwalk and where it goes over the wetlands and how much you alter the environment down there by having it lit all night. That's all.
Yeah, well, these would be low LEDs that basically light the deck.
Yep.
So, I know there ain't lights getting down there, you know, in any case, because the deck's fairly surrounded by wood, right? It's covered with wood. Well, I can make the request and see what we can do about doing, something that can come on and off with motion to people approaching it.
Right. And again, it's just it's really, you know, the actual boardwalk going across the wetlands that we're most
Yeah.
concerned with.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that the other areas, there may be some lights. I know, do we still have that community garden there, Gene? So I'm looking at this drawing, I'm not seeing the community garden.
We, you know, I talked about the, you know, relocation of the pickleball courts. I don't think I
Yeah.
specifically said that we're replacing it with resident garden area, garden space. You know, that's what that big square is right along the match line in this sheet to the west of the boardwalk. As well as some, you know, play spaces, open spaces for residents as well, just north of that.
Well, I put it this way, Sandra, I think we can definitely get that bridge on a motion detector, one way or the other. The rest
Yeah.
of it, though, would probably either stay on or it would stay on until a certain hour at night. And then go down and then be activated by the same motion detector, you know what I mean?
Yep. And again, yeah, that's just go ahead and follow up on that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that's part of what DEP
Yeah.
is asking also.
We'll talk to our electrical contractor and our light, our low voltage guy who handles the lighting and security.
Okay.
Okay.
Leah, anything else you got?
They do have a waiver request for work in the no disturb. We could take a vote on that like we did with the previous one, and then
Yep.
aside from that, and the items we're waiting on, I do have drafted findings and conditions if we want to go through those.
Okay. So as far as doing a waiver request right now for the work within the no disturb, I'll go around to the commissioners and ask their kind of opinion on that and so forth. But back to the applicant, do you have, are you at a state right now with your plans that whatever the area of disturbance that we vote on tonight is going to be the area of disturbance moving forward? And this is, again, just uh, confined to the 25-foot no disturb because that's what the waiver request is on. So question
Yeah,
back to the applicant. Go ahead.
on behalf of John and Brendan, I think we are. I think we've established our limit of disturbance in that 25-foot. We've pulled it in where we can. But remember, we are also proposing to improve the vegetation where there is vegetation today between any impervious area and the wetland buffer, or the wetland line, actually. So we're proposing more plantings there. So I think we're comfortable with the disturbance at this point.
All right. Let me just quickly go around to the commissioners to see if they have any questions on this specific waiver request. Jonathan,
Nope, no questions.
Travis,
I still don't know what the total square footage is of the impacts within the no disturb. Do we know that yet?
That-
so
That's
Go ahead.
in the letter that we provided, the cover letter dated June 11th. The total presented within the 0 to 100 foot and the 0 to 25 foot are those impacts.
The zero, so yeah, what is the square footage of the 0 to 25 foot? Like this,
26,000, 26,101. I did just notice a typo in that table.
and the mitigation for that is not 1-to-1, correct? It's just for the wetland impacts.
The wetland impacts are at over 1-to-1. The mitigation okay, I understand what you're asking now. I don't have that number in front of me unless somebody else can.
So I guess Leah or Sandy, can we allow over 5,000 square feet of impacts under the Grafton bylaw?
So
to-
when, go ahead.
Yeah, like, I thought it said it's cumulative for the wetland impacts and the no disturb impacts. Unless we think these revisions or these impacts would be in the best interest of the wetland bylaw.
Okay.
Is that
So
right?
yeah, so if you look at the cover letter, I don't know, Jan, if you can pull this up, the cover letter from June 11th, it's got a table on it. And it has a breakdown of both the 100-foot buffer and then the 25-foot buffer. So if you can go to the page 2 on that one. There we go. There you go. So Travis, good questions, and this is kind of what we had asked for last time. Is basically looking at this table here. It goes through what's in the 0 to 25 as far as pavement goes, gravel goes, the building, and then it's all the other kind of surface covers, and then it's what's being added to it.
Okay. And what tripped me up was the total within 100 foot. I
Yeah,
didn't understand if that was
That's
the,
my error. Yep. It should
that's
say
the
25
typo.
foot.
Someone
Okay.
someone
Yep.
copied the table, and
Mhm.
I've never done that before, and didn't actually put 25 foot at the bottom instead of 100. But yes, but so these are the tables, and I think this is where, I don't know, previously we had really wanted to understand what what the kind of restoration is, and this is a good one to kind of look at for that. So in general, going down in impervious areas and gravel and so forth in the building, and then adding vegetation, but they're also going back in there. You have to account for the retaining wall, the stone dust path that we talked about. There's also some permeable pavers, grass pavers. Grass pavers are for the fire lane,
Correct.
and then the boardwalk is about 1,000 square feet.
Okay, so bear with me. This is also wetland impact along with the no
No.
disturb? This
Nope.
is just no
This is
disturb.
just within the 0 foot,
Okay,
1 by foot.
okay.
Oh.
And the vegetation isn't necessarily native. I think previous conversations have been there's opportunities to do native plantings, but it's not like a commitment. So we're getting landscape plantings within the no disturb, but not like a firm commitment for some
I think
vegetation that might enhance the wetland, the
the
adjacent
revised,
wetland.
sorry, the revised drawings do have some more specific plantings proposed.
But I think, yeah, so the question, Travis, is really where we have the proposed increase in vegetation. That's clearly it's some other impervious area or some other surface. Now it's going up. The question would be of that, I'm just going to round to 20,000 square feet is 200 square feet, kind of enhancement to, or supportive of the wetland vegetation and habitat, or is it 10,000 square feet of it? Is that sort of what your question is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, are we improving the adjacent wetland, I guess? Are we
Yeah.
meeting the bylaws intent?
Yep.
Regardless of what we think about this project, like, it's
Yeah.
great, but from a wetland protection standpoint, are we meeting
Yep.
the bylaw intent? That's my concern with all these
Yep.
impacts.
Yeah, and so from my perspective, this table is very helpful. But I think one of the things that could maybe not change this table, but have just a footnote of the 20,000 square feet of vegetation that's being added. What would be considered a natural habitat plant palette versus more of a traditional landscaping? Because I know previously you had indicated like everything upland of the stone path, if I'm remembering correct, stone dust pathway would be more of a traditional landscaping. And then from the pathway to the wetlands, that's going to be more of a native plant mix.
Yep, and I'm gonna ask Joey if he can chime in on this. Because we did have this discussion.
I would be happy to. Hi, Joseph Jenga, also with Ty and Bond. Happy to speak to the restoration of the 25-foot no disturb buffer. So yes, you are correct. In the previous meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago now, we discussed maybe a turf lawn between the stone dust path and the face of the building. We've since revised that to continue the more native and woodland planting palette that we were proposing between the stone dust path and the edge of the wetland. We're proposing to carry that up to the building. So all of the proposed vegetation areas within the 25-foot no disturb buffer would make use of the native planting palette that was provided in this latest set of drawings. I think on sheet L401 speaks more specifically to a variety of native shrubs, ground covers, perennials, grasses that we think will vastly improve upon the existing condition, especially given how overrun and overgrown a lot of that wetland and wetland buffer area is. So you can see there's a few different planting schedules broken out here, and they correspond to a few different hatches on the newly provided planting plan. So there's an upland planting schedule, and that speaks to more of the parking areas that are more upland around the the front facade of the building, in the plant beds in the parking lot, outside of the 25-foot no disturb buffer. There's then the second schedule is a wetland buffer and woodland, we're calling it, planting schedule. And that's what we're proposing in all areas where we're intervening in the 25-foot no disturb buffer. And that's to more, sort of mimic, but definitely expand upon and reinvigorate that wetland buffer environment. And then the final plant schedule on the bottom left speaks to the plantings that would go in our wetland restoration or replication areas.
And you said you have a new planting plan?
Yeah, so that would be on the next sheet. Or the next two sheets, actually, first for the primary building here. So you can see that sort of zigzag hatch around three sides of the building. That would be that, wetland buffer and woodland, shrub and ground cover variety. Again, native species, trying to reinvigorate and restore that wetland buffer, both from an ecological perspective and, also for residents, trying to do what we can to open up views to the wetland and have that as a, a visual resource. I think the only area where the small area of the 25-foot buffer that's going to be vegetated with lawn is in the fire truck access strip on the left-hand side of the parking lot. That area would just be turf lawn, but like I said, everywhere else in the 25-foot no disturb would be that native plantings palette.
Thanks for that information, Travis. Does that help?
That helps. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's all my questions on the no disturb.
Okay, cool. Emily, do you have any other comments on the no disturb waiver?
No, no questions.
And
Thank you.
okay, and Jonathan?
Nope, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had similar kind of questions, Travis. Thank you for asking that. And this actually gives us a much better idea of what is being discussed. So Leah, we have the choice of doing that now or doing it at the next hearing, correct?
The waiver request, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Madam
Yep.
Chair, can I chime in on something?
Sure.
So I'm gonna take back something I said earlier. There is going to be one change to this. One thing that we've reviewed only in the past week, and this plan shows it perfectly, is this area in the back of the building, adjacent to where we have some grills and seating area. So this is an area that's currently not proposed as being that 25-foot restoration planting area, but just other lawn area. And that's, immediately in the back from the front door of the facility straight back, you can see an area that's not quite that dark hatch. Recent discussions have changed what we're doing there. We want to make that more amenity space, with tables and chairs and couches and a fire pit. So that part is going to change. So we do probably
Okay.
need to get you revised numbers in that 25-foot.
Okay, so thank you for that information. We'll just hold off on that.
Instead of trying to deal with it next time.
Yep. And then to be honest, that the table and then this plan and this kind of shading of the plan is very helpful. Okay. Leah, back to you.
Can I chime in, Gene?
Certainly.
I actually think you have it right on this drawing. Because the fire pit was to go over in the area to the right of the meeting room, big, meeting room. And behind the fitness center, we put in green space again.
We'll have to discuss that because that's not what we've talked about as a team outside. So we'll talk about that separately.
Okay.
But regardless, we will get the revised numbers.
Right. And then, I just want to make sure when we have a vote and a motion on that waiver that we're referencing the correct plan.
Right.
So that's cool. We'll wait on that. All right, Leah.
That's all I have.
Okay. As far as special conditions at this point, you want to just share that with the applicant so that the next meeting we can have a more robust conversation around it?
Sure.
Okay. Just to give you the heads up on what we're thinking about uh, conditions. Also want to hit on a couple of things. One is, Leah, we did get a comment letter. I can't see the date, like we received it on May 8th. Is that anything that's new or we've had that for a while?
If it's May 8th, then it's been a little while.
Okay.
The
I just want to make
abutter
sure
one,
I just want to make sure we've talked about it at a public hearing.
the
And
the one from the abutter,
yeah,
I don't think we have covered
okay.
that in a meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and at this time, just if there's anyone in the public that has any comments or questions on this, um, please raise your hand and we're happy to hear it. And then also we will ask the applicant if they have any, if you have a question, if they have answers for it. But I just wanted to make sure that we get it into the record. So basically, this is a written letter to the Conservation Commission that we received, uh, basically giving their opinion in writing on the project. Do we need to, Leah, read the whole thing in or
No,
no? Okay. And if anyone's curious about it, I'll give a quick summary. Basically, indicating, happy that something's happening with this particular site, and just also that they're looking at, that the site is being maximized out and in potential, you know, in how close it is to the wetlands and so forth, and just concerns about future flooding. Um, there's just some general concerns of not something happening here, but concerns about the size of the impact, and that's from um, uh, an abutter. This is available online, right, Leah?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, yeah, just so if you have any questions on that, I just want to make sure that it was brought to the attention of the applicant, and we're happy to share that with you. And I just wanted to make sure it was mentioned in a public hearing. Um, Jan, anyone from the public?
Nothing from the public.
Okay. All right. Having said that, I will just flip it back to the applicant. If you have any other particular comments or questions or issues you want to raise at this point. Otherwise, I think we all know that having just gotten the DEP and a few other things, DEP number, that will be continuing this to the July 16th hearing.
Yeah, I think we need to wait for the Graves final
Yep.
letter as well, so.
Okay. Any questions for us? Okay. Having said that, I'll quickly go around the commission, see if anyone else has anything to bring up tonight. Otherwise, we'll start with a motion. So, Emily, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Travis?
Nothing else tonight.
All right, great. And then Jonathan.
Similarly to the last hearing, are we going to pursue trying to, if there's work in the no disturb, is it because it's changing, we're not going to pursue trying to vote on that, or are we going to vote on that because there's absolutely going to be work in the no disturb and we can knock it off the list prior to the next meeting?
So, I mean, I think that was what the conversation was around, is that something we want to vote on tonight? And obviously there's going to be some changes, or we just want to make sure we have the finalized plan, but also to like Travis's questions, which was on point about, we know that this is an altered site, it's a disturbed site, it's a contaminated site, and that they are working within the 25-foot no disturb. There's actually existing disturbance in there. Previously existing conditions has disturbances within the 25-foot, and we've discussed previously, what would be, as far as doing work in the 25-foot, what would the enhancements be? and so forth, and this is the plan they have in front of us. I think we have to wait till we get the updated plan. But then then it's up to us to vote on what we want to, or what we think is, I think Travis put it the best is, does this plan represent the intent within our local bylaw of what the 25-foot no disturb is trying to do? And in this case, there's a lot of existing disturbance is what they're proposing, meeting with the general goal of the bylaw is what we need to determine.
Okay, understood.
All right. And I think we need to wait on that. And then, but this is if anyone does have any specific questions around that, I think it would be good to it'd be good to let the applicant know those concerns now. So, other than that, I just want to double check with the applicant. You are requesting a continuance to the next hearing on July 16th.
Yes.
All right. Anything else, Leah, before we move on? And then a double check with Jan on anyone from the public.
Nothing from me.
All right. And nothing from the public.
Nothing from the public.
All right, thank you. So do I have a motion to continue this public hearing to our next meeting?
I'll move to continue the hearing for 17 Upton Road to July 16th.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. Good luck, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Good
All
night.
right, Leah. All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Leah, what's up next?
8:30 in like 30 more seconds.
You did that on purpose with the schedule, didn't you?
Or magic. I was getting nervous though when we were flying through everything.
I saw the gap and I go, oh, that was the 2 continuances or something. There's a reason there for a gap. It wasn't just random.
That's why I asked so many questions.
There you go.
Yeah.
But they were good questions. That's what we want, you know? I see 8:30. So, and this is for 12 Centennial Drive.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see here. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for a Grafton Stormwater Bylaw permit, application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of a warehouse at 12 Centennial Drive, 36R Nelson Street, 83 Westboro Road, 105 and 105R Westboro Road. So, who is here to speak to that?
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm Greg Hockmuth from Epsilon Associates. Actually, John Perry is going to be leading us off. I don't see him up here yet.
Okay. So one thing I have to disclose right up front, that the company I work for, Niche Engineering, does a great deal of work with Epsilon, and both in the capacity of them as sub to us, basically subcontracted to Niche, and also that we have been subcontracted to Epsilon. So once we get going and everyone's here, I'll ask if there's anyone that has concerns about that potential conflict of interest, just to make sure that whether I should recuse myself or not. But so you are expecting someone else?
John, are we expecting Jonathan Scott?
I know he's logged in. He's probably where I just was a minute ago watching and not able to be a panelist, but now I've been promoted to a panelist, it seems, so I'm here and I can speak.
Okay. So I will go. So, John, are you the representative for the owner?
Correct. So I'm John Perry from Langen Engineering with a site civil engineer. I'm here with virtually John Scott from Prologis, who's the applicant. It looks like John just got let in as a panelist as well. I'm here with Greg Hockmith from Epsilon, who I believe you already met, and Matt Eckel from Fletcher Tilton is the representing the land use attorney.
Okay.
So we have a presentation. I can queue it up if you're ready for us.
So before we get to that, I just want to go through my various relationships with the different people that are presenting tonight. So just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, as I mentioned before, I've worked the company I work for, and worked several times with Epsilon on several projects with both them as a subconsultant and Niche as a subconsultant to them. I've worked with Langdon a few times down in New Jersey. I think I joined the things that have relationships with the various folks that are among the design team. And so I would like to ask the applicant if they feel they would like me to recuse. I don't have any direct contractual relationships with the applicant that I know of. So I would put that to
I
the
don't see a
applicant.
problem
Okay.
personally.
All right. And so, Leah, just want to make sure that's disclosed and included in the minutes.
Sure.
Having said that and disclosed that, be my guest. You have the floor and go ahead with your presentation.
All right, very good. Ian, yes, thank you for queuing it up for us here. I'm John Perry, again, as I mentioned before, site civil engineer on the project. I won't go through the all the intros again. But if you want to go to the next slide, these are, I think I mentioned a minute ago, most of the project team, a few companies on this slide that are involved with the project that I didn't mention is Leighton is going to be the general contractor for this. UPS will be the tenant, and Babcock Design is on as the architect. Next slide, please. And Jonathan Scott, if you're able to unmute.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I'll keep it brief. I know it's a long night, but Jonathan Scott, director with Prologis, will be primarily the boots on the ground. I've met a few already. Really just a little bit on this slide is just a little bit about Prologis. Just something to let you know that we're 40 years plus, developing, owning, and also managing these facilities all over the country and also all over the world, 19 different countries. I say that just because it's very important to us as a developer. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but I truly feel that our group believes it, that we do partner with our towns. A considerable amount of effort has been put into this project, and John and Greg will get into it in full detail, but kind of working backwards. Usually, we have a building in mind and we go out and we do that and try to make the building fit. But this case, we heard the messages loud and clear, and we designed the building to our best ability around the wetlands. Not ideal for the customer, but we were able to work with them and work with their operations and also what's needed here with the town to try to truly work everything into what's possible for this area. So other than that, our team also consists of Ryan Kaminsky and Art Macris, that's VP and SVP respectively. They'll be involved in the project as well, but you'll see a lot of me, and looking forward to presenting this project with you guys and working through everything that you have here.
All right. Thanks, John. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give one more quick intro to the team member. Hannah Schur from Langen is also on with us tonight. She's a project engineer, works with me, and was very, very integral with all the plans and submissions. So next slide, please. Okay, so just to kind of orient everyone for where the site is located, this is obviously just an overall project location map here, and it's a 212 plus or minus acre parcel altogether. It's made up of several different parcels, but all under common ownership as the 212 acres, located about a half mile down Centec Boulevard from Route 20, which is to the north, bounded by the MBTA commuter rail along the south, as you can see. There's a transmission easement that runs through the site, and the town line between Grafton and Shrewsbury also bisects the property, with the majority of the site, about 160 acres, being in Grafton, and about 54 being in Shrewsbury. But as you can see here, a large portion of the overall acreage is along the west, and is really not part of this development. So the development area is really the plus or minus 150 acres on the eastern side of Summit Brook, which also bisects the site, and Greg will get into that in a little bit more depth in a few minutes, talking about existing conditions and environmental resource areas. But that's essentially where the site is. If you go to the next slide, please. I'll get into a little bit about what the site plan is and what this project entails. And this is kind of just a zoomed in shot of that development area on the eastern side of Summit Brook. And again, you can see the town line divide in that thicker dashed line going diagonal through the site plan. This is a distribution hub for UPS. It's a regional hub, and it's going to be a combination of a distribution facility. So the brown small trucks, package cars as we call them, will be here to deliver packages to people's homes, and it is also used for, as I mentioned before, kind of a regional hub to transport goods to other delivery centers. So there will be both tractor trailer trucks coming in from Centec Boulevard. As you can see, the truck access points there off of Centec. Tractor trailers will come in to the site to deliver goods, which will be sorted in the facility, and within the facility, in the longer, skinnier wings, if you will, on the ends of the facility is where the brown trucks will be. They actually go inside to load up, so they're protected from the elements. And then throughout the site, there's loading docks along the building to load and unload goods, and trailer staging, parking around the site as well. Now you'll probably notice that this is a fairly unusual shaped building, and that's for a very specific reason. This is a very interesting and unique site, and as you can see in the purple outline there are a lot of wetlands on site, and we tried very, very hard to have this site plan work with the site. And oftentimes, the building architecture drives the site plan. In this case, it was really the opposite. We, as the civil engineers and site planners, actually kind of play architect a little bit here, and we massaged and revised the more ideal footprint that we started with in order to make this work with the site. So we have limited, so we can essentially maximize the open space and have no, the goal was to have no wetlands disturbance. And we think we've done a very good job of doing that. This did go through multiple different iterations, so that we, again, would limit any environmental impacts. And save for this one small isolated pocket that you'll see in the southern portion of our truck parking area. Except for that area, the entire site plan meets the bylaws. I will just point out too here that we have a separate employee parking entrance off of Centennial Drive. So the traffic from trucks and employees is completely separate. And there's a few ancillary uses here that are located in Shrewsbury, but I'll point them out, and we've labeled them here. One is a maintenance building where mechanics can perform light maintenance on vehicles, fixing a flat tire and fixing a broken mirror, that sort of thing. There's a wash tunnel where the trucks can get washed down. And there's also a fueling area. So there'll be a above ground diesel tank for fueling, and also possibly some compressed natural gas as well. And I point those out because I want to make sure everyone has a holistic picture of the site plan. Okay, next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Greg from Epsilon to discuss the resource areas.
Thanks, John. For the record, Greg Hockman from Epsilon Associates. I'm going to talk about the existing conditions on site. As John mentioned, I'll call it the property, which is it's comprised of 7 parcels that total approximately 212 acres. 54 acres in Shrewsbury, 166 plus or minus acres in Grafton. The focus of the notice of intent application is on the eastern portion of the locus. So it would be east of the pond that Summit Brook flows into before exiting under the MBTA rail line to the south. We did delineate the resource areas on the western portion of that ponded area as well, but we're not going to talk about them. We do show them, but I wanted to point that out. And we're not asking the commission to review those or consider those as part of this permit application. John already talked about what surrounds us. I can talk a little bit about the soils. So the soil mapping on the site in the upland areas is primarily Chatfield, Paxton, Canton, and Hinckley. And the wetland areas are primarily mapped as Whitman and Freetown muck. It's pretty obvious where the wet areas are out here. These were not difficult resource areas to delineate. The property's not mapped as an ACEC, nor is it an ORW. It's not mapped as priority or estimated habitat for rare species or wildlife. There's no mapped certified vernal pools. However, there are 3 mapped potential vernal pools, and they're in the top right portion of our locus. 2 of them are in Shrewsbury, closer to Centec Boulevard. And the 3rd one straddles the Shrewsbury-Grafton property boundary. It's within the A-series BVW. There's a confined basin depression that was shown as a PVP, and that again is right on the town line. Early last November, wetland scientists from Epsilon, including myself, went out to the property to delineate the jurisdictional wetland resource areas. Over a series of 4 to 5 days, we identified all of the jurisdictional resource areas impacting the properties. We found BVWs, IVWs, we found riverfront area. There's a mapped BLSF that's associated with the 100-year flood that parallels Summit Brook and the ponded portion of Summit Brook. It's identified as elevation 363, NAVD 88. Those are shown on the permit site plan set. And as you know, that's important in Grafton because the offsets extend from the BLSF if it's above the delineated BVW boundary. And in this case, I believe it was almost entirely. So our no disturb zone and 100-foot buffer zone does extend from the BLSF on that portion of the site. We also identified an intermittent stream that is shown as an intermittent stream on the current USGS map flowing within the A-series BVW. And that's the BVW that starts on the Shrewsbury-Grafton town line, flows in a southerly direction and then a westerly direction towards Summit Brook. We did run stream stats on that center line. It was a digitized center line in stream stats, so we were able to run it. And it has a 0.42 square mile watershed, so not quite large enough for it to be deemed perennial. And we clicked the delineation point that was the furthest down in the reach of that intermittent stream, just so it would capture as much of the watershed before it entered the pond. And we did include that stream stats analysis in our notice of intent application, in case the commission wanted to review that. So November is not the ideal time to be looking for vernal pool habitat or trying to determine if an area is a vernal pool. In addition to the 3 PVPs that we knew about, we also found another isolated confined basin depression that's shown on this plan as Series L. So we knew we needed to take a peek at that when we went back this spring to investigate the PVPs in Shrewsbury. We went out to the site on March 14th, March 28th, April 2nd, and April 26th. Just prior to March 28th seemed to be the date on this site where all of the pools that were functioning as vernal pools were very active. In Shrewsbury, we found evidence of obligate amphibians in all 3 PVPs. So we found enough evidence to make them certifiable. However, the L series, which I'm going to talk about in great detail a little further into this discussion, didn't have anything. It did have water. It wasn't very deep. It was just over shin deep, but it did have water. We went back on the 28th to again look at the L series. And as I mentioned before, all the other pools on site were very, very active. The L series still didn't have any evidence. We went out again on April 2nd and April 26th, and we're not able to find any evidence of facultative or obligate species. During the IDR process with both Grafton and Shrewsbury, both commissions engaged the services of Art Allen from Ecotech to review the resource area boundaries delineated by Epsilon. And on April 2nd, we met Mr. Allen on site. I did, and we walked all of the resource areas on the eastern portion of the site. Art was not asked to look at anything on the western portion of the site. We did make some adjustments in Shrewsbury, and I think we did make a couple minor adjustments in Grafton. All of those flags, both the old and the new, show in the permit site plan set in case the commission wanted to see what moved. And we did receive a letter from Mr. Allen on June 3rd stating that the revised plans accurately reflect the jurisdictional resource areas that he was asked to evaluate. Next slide. So that it looked a lot similar to the prior slide. The only thing we showed on that one was just the building footprint, just so the commission could get an idea of where the building layout was in relation to the existing conditions. Next slide, please. So the L series, through engineering calculations, we were able to determine that the L series does not meet the definition of ILSF under the State Wetlands Protection Act, which requires a volume of at least 1/4 acre feet to an average depth of at least 6 inches. As you know, your regulations don't require as much volume. 0.01 acre feet, which is 500 cubic feet to an average depth of 6 inches. In running the calculations on the L series, we came up with 0.16 acre feet to an average depth of about 8.6 inches. So clearly meeting the definition of land subject to flooding under your bylaw. So it is a bylaw jurisdictional resource area. Knowing full well that we had to do the best we could to avoid, minimize, and stay out of resource areas, whether or not they were just local jurisdictional resource areas. As John mentioned, we did our best to reconfigure the building, reconfigure the parking layout. But the conclusion that we came to was that we could not avoid this resource area. There were no practical alternatives available with less impact than what you're seeing on these plans. So once we determined that, our focus became on trying to replicate this somewhere. And before we got to that point, during the IDR process, we disclosed what we found was that we were more than likely going to have to fill this L series resource area. And I think it was Mr. Allen from Ecotech, when he saw where we wanted to put it, which was parallel with the A series BVW in an area that's currently wooded, no disturb zone. He recommended taking a look to see if we could possibly incorporate this compensatory storage area somewhere within one of the stormwater management areas, trying to find an area that we were currently clearing so we wouldn't have to clear vegetated buffer to essentially create this storage area. And I hate to rate wetlands and try to say that wetlands aren't important, because all wetlands are important, but this L series, in an average year, you'd walk by it and probably miss it at least half the time. It doesn't appear to have a very long hydro period. It does hold water. I've seen water in it. But again, it's not deep. It's void of vegetation. I think there were a handful of ferns that we observed this past November, but there's no woody growth within it. We scoured the lowest portion within that L series that we could find to see if we could find any aquatic fauna, such as fingernail clams, any caddisfly cases, aquatic snails. We didn't find anything. There were silt-stained leaves, which again proves that this thing does hold water. But in my opinion, it's not a very high value wetland area. But regardless of that, we still had to do our best to avoid. We couldn't, so then our focus became on trying to find a spot for it. And that's what you see on the left. So in one of our stormwater management areas, it's an infiltration basin. And I know Sandy's already thinking this, well, how are you going to have hydrology if it's an infiltration basin that has to be a certain distance above the water table? Very good question. So we're proposing to put in a liner in this depression within the stormwater management area that would allow it to hold water. And we've got it designed so that it matches, well, it's slightly over what we're proposing to displace. So in this case, it would be 0.17 acre feet. And within that depression, which shows pretty well on the wetland replication sheet within the plan set, we are proposing to put 3 mounds. And on those mounds, we'd be proposing native shrub species, native herbaceous species. In the lower portions, we're proposing buttonbush, because I do think this depression is going to hold water most of the spring, most of the fall. It's probably only going to dry out in the summer. And we're also proposing winterberry. We've got 2 different seed mixes going in. So a little unorthodox, but it will provide the required flood storage. And it's in an area that wouldn't require any additional clearing of vegetated buffer. And that was really our goal. Except for this one location throughout the balance of the 212 acre site, the project is complying with every other setback, both state and local. Most of the projects outside the buffer zone. We have no activity proposed in BLSF, no activity proposed in riverfront area. no activity proposed in BVW. In many locations, we're far exceeding the no disturb zone requirements. In other words, we're not pushing the envelope and working right up to the no disturb zone. So we've done our best to try to comply. Next slide. I'm gonna hand it back over to John.
Yeah, this is where I'll jump back in. Thanks, Craig. So, you know, with any site, stormwater compliance is critical, right? Especially with, you know, a large complicated site like this. And we've spent a lot of time and energy on making sure we had a very robust stormwater system. And, you know, here we're just listing out all of the state standards, and we know there's also a local stormwater standard, and we've fully complied with those. Specifically, we're calling out there, and you can see with the red asterisks, you know, the town of Grafton requires a much higher level of water quality treatment than the state does, and we're meeting that as well. So it's a 90%, you know, total suspended solids removal versus the 80 that the state requires, and the town also requires the treatment of and removal of phosphorus as well, which the state does not. So we are complying with all of those standards. Next slide, please. And, you know, the way we're doing that is a multitude of different types of stormwater best management practices. And this slide here shows the different, you know, infiltration basins. We have detention basins, underground detention and infiltration. We have a bioretention area as well shown here. So all said and done, we have about, I think it's 13 different stormwater management, you know, infiltration or storage basins here. We try to maximize the use of above ground, you know, more naturalized ponds. But as you can see, we do have a few relatively, I guess, relatively speaking, you know, small underground systems as well. And we did maximize and think through very specifically our infiltration areas. And as you can see, the majority of those are in the more western area, the larger shapes shown in that light blue or cyan color. And that was very intentional because of after we conducted our soil investigation, we found that we had some nice sandy, gravelly soils in that area that would provide a good level of infiltration, as where some of the higher areas of the site and more north and into Shrewsbury, the soils were a little less conducive of infiltration. Next slide, please. And so with that, this is just to show one of our typical treatment trains, to achieve that high level of water quality that I mentioned before. So kind of going down the line here, right? We'll have a street sweeping program, which is your very first line of defense. And then all the stormwater will flow to deep sump, hooded catch basins, which is your next line of capturing sediment, and the hood in the sumps and the hoods will help to remove any floating oils or greases that may be in there. We are utilizing water quality structures, so proprietary separator type units, to achieve our required pretreatment. We are a land use with higher potential pollutant loading due to the number of traffic trips per day here. We will have over 1,000 trips per day. So we classify as the loophole, as we like to abbreviate it. So we need to make sure we have 44% pre-treatment before we discharge to an infiltration BMP. So with those first three treatment devices, we exceed that. So after our water quality unit, we would, for the most part, be discharging to an infiltration basin. And as I showed in the last slide, in some cases, it's a detention basin or a rain garden. But the vast majority of stormwater will be flowing through infiltration basins. We are vastly exceeding our required recharge volumes and water quality volumes that will be infiltrated. And any runoff that does not infiltrate through will be handled through an outlet control structure in the pond, in the basin, in order to release it via a controlled rate. And our ultimate discharge structure would be a level spreader with a depression stabilized with a fabric and riprap and a level curb, so that the flow is spread out and we're not creating any point discharges that would create erosion issue. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the area I had called out before on the site plan, and this is showing the maintenance area, the wash tunnel, and the fueling area. And this is in Shrewsbury, but I wanted to point this out specifically to show that it is outside of the 100-foot buffer in Shrewsbury, but also it does, some of the stormwater does flow into Grafton, right? So we wanted to make sure that we explained the water quality treatment and the spill prevention control measures that are proposed here. So if you go to the next slide. This is, a kind of a colorized version of our stormwater and sanitary plan in this particular area, obviously. And the blue lines throughout the maintenance and fueling area represent the stormwater system. And as you can see, those with those kind of dark circles there, those are the deep sump hooded catch basins. So all the stormwater gets captured there, and then it's routed through. In this area, we have 3 additional oil and water separators as well, shown in those maroon or brownish shapes there. So all that stormwater will go through deep sump catch basins, and then through a large oil water separator, and then through the water quality unit, and then through the detention forebay, and then a detention basin. So we have a very high level of treatment here. The wash tunnel, so the wash water, any overflow from that operation. So there is a recirculation and a reuse component to that, but any overflow from there goes through the sanitary system shown in green, and none of that water enters the stormwater system. And again, that is, there is a clarifying vault and an oil water separator before it goes to the pump station and ultimately discharges to the municipal sanitary. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our erosion control, one of our erosion control plans. And, we wanted to point out that obviously this is a large site. There is some topography on the site, and we have a very good erosion control and prevention plan. And as you can see in the blue, we'll have a full perimeter of wire back silt fence with compost filter tubes. Shown in orange represents multiple kind of redundant rows of compost filter tubes following contour lines. We have, stabilized construction entrances on both Syntec and on the Centennial Boulevard, where the employee lot will be. We have we'll put our stockpiles and any contractor parking shown in the circle and rectangle there in the middle of the kind of white space, in the flatter areas on site, outside of any outside of all the buffer zones, well outside of the 100-foot buffer zones. I think importantly to note here too is that as opposed to just erosion control, there will also be erosion prevention by the contractor, right? And some of those items here are listed below, with site stabilization, right? So temporary seeding, using straw, using jute netting along the way to prevent erosion before it ever becomes an issue. Next slide, please. And within our stormwater report, there is a detailed long-term operations and maintenance plan that is proposed. So, any stormwater system, we've talked about all the treatment train and all the great things that we think we're doing to treat the water to meet the standards and exceed the standards. But that needs to be maintained, right, in perpetuity going forward, so that years to come, you're still getting that high level of treatment. And the purpose of the slide is not to read every word on these these charts and tables here, but just to show that we do have a detailed long-term O&M plan for all of the stormwater BMPs on site. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm just going to quickly turn it back over to Greg to talk a little bit about the landscaping and planting.
Sure, thank you. So the good news is all of the plantings being proposed are native, and most of them are drought tolerant. We're looking at red maple, sweet gum, tulip tree, river birch, white pine for the trees, bayberry, witch hazel are some of the shrubs. And what we're really trying to do is vegetate everywhere that we can. So not just the islands within the parking lot, but slopes, the stormwater management areas, any space that you see that's green on this plan is going to be part of our planting plan. It's going to incorporate one of 3 seed mixes. We've had really good luck with the company down in Pennsylvania, Ernst. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they have seed mixes that they can tailor towards any site, and specifically we've had good luck with some of their New England seed mixes. Meadow Mix A is native grasses, sedges, and rushes, and that would be proposed in most of the stormwater management areas. Meadow Mix B is a slope mix, and I can say that none of the slopes within buffer zone areas are steeper than 3 to 1, and 3 to 1 slopes can easily be vegetated. So this Meadow Mix B, I mentioned it's a slope mix. It's mostly grasses, but it also has black-eyed Susan, wild bergamot, tall white beard tongue, and purple top, which should all do fine here. Meadow Mix C, it's a native upland wildlife forage and cover mix. It contains blue stem, switchgrass, again, black-eyed Susan, wild bergamot, but also milkweed and tick trefoil. We've used all 3 of these seed mixes on a site in North Andover for a Amazon warehouse that went in not too long ago. I personally monitored that for 2 years, so I got to see these seed mixes in action, and they did really, really well. They filled in quickly and did everything that they were described to do. But that's a takeaway here, is we're really trying to vegetate everywhere that we can. And of course, native species are typically welcomed. Next slide, please.
Yeah, that really concludes our formal presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
All right, thank you. So we'll start with kind of just our agent's initial report. I have a lot of questions. You also understand a few things as far as the role that we will play. It's not only just the wetlands and the wetlands, our bylaw in the state Wetlands Protection Act and its regulations. We also do the stormwater bylaw within the Conservation Commission, and understand that some of the local bylaws dealing with the stormwater is reflective. It's an MS4 community. That's where the 90% and the 60% comes from. Also, just a quick question: are you aware of the proposed changes to the Massachusetts DEP stormwater standards in the handbook? And have you looked at any of those to see if this particular system will meet that?
We're aware of them. I've reviewed the draft of them, and I don't see anything in those that would, require alterations or changes to this design.
Okay. Leo, why don't you give your quick, your kind of overview of your initial report and review of this?
Sure. So they touched on a few of my points already, but aside from those, we are waiting on a written review from Graves, as well as DEP number and comments. They did provide an illicit discharge statement, but it was not signed. One question I did have, I think it was in the NOI, or maybe the stormwater report, talked about snow storage and said it was like itemized in the plan set, but I couldn't quite find it. If you guys can just speak to where snow storage is proposed.
Sure. Yeah, and I believe it's labeled on the site plans in the package. You may have to, dig for it a little bit, but I can tell you some of the key areas where they are. And we try to disperse snow storage kind of throughout the site, right, and not have just one centralized area for it, just because it's such a large site. A lot of the flatter green spaces that you see around. Now, I don't have control, obviously, but throughout the parking area, we did grade in specifically snow storage areas, and there's also some parking areas that can be used, and if that area is exceeded, then obviously they'll have to look at other areas and trucking off site possibly, and large snow events.
Okay. Does a crossing near wetland flag A9 that Art mentioned in his letter, is that gonna need upgrading in order to, I think it's flagged as like a maintenance access? So is that going to need to be upgraded for vehicles to cross that spot?
Yeah, he's referring to, there's an access path down off of Parmenter Road, which is kind of just off, well, I guess it's just on screen here on the bottom left corner, essentially, right? There's a culvert there that connects the two wetland systems, and there's an access path that comes from Parmenter Road that crosses over the railroad tracks there. I think his comment was that if that was going to be used for maintenance or access, that we should consider upgrading those culverts. We really intend to, we had thought about using that for access, but there's other options as well on site here, where our main intent is to access the basins from the site as opposed to from that area.
Okay, the only other comment I had was just to talk a little bit more about phasing. So we do have in our stormwater bylaw, we cap the amount of land open at one time to 5 acres. So obviously it's going to go beyond that. So you would need an additional waiver request and fee for exceeding that amount. And then we should just talk in greater detail about phasing for the whole site and what that's going to look like. That's all I have, Sandy.
Okay, I'll go around the commission to see if they have any questions up front, and then I have several stormwater questions. But let's go to Jonathan. Any questions up front here? I know we're very early on and we haven't had a chance to delve into some of the details. Anything up front?
Would the planning board look to hold a bond based on the size and the nature of this site to close it? Or is that something we can discuss as part of our future conditions? Maybe just a question more for Leah than.
So
just-
It's
Sorry,
my understanding that planning only holds bonds on subdivisions and they hold them until lots are released. I don't think they hold bonds on anything other than subdivisions. So it would be up to us to hold one for the purposes of like erosion control, stormwater management, site stabilization, those kind of things.
Right.
Okay. So probably further discussion if there's a special condition that requires that or if a requirement, but no other questions.
All right, thanks. Emily, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Travis, any questions?
So wetland M is a vernal pool, correct? Am I reading the plan correctly?
Yeah, so
But-
wetland M is the big one up in the top right of the plan over in Shrewsbury.
That's my next question. That's in Shrewsbury, right?
Yeah, but that was so Natural Heritage shows the M series as 2 PVPs. We delineated it as one large IVW with 2 confined basin depressions within it, and both basin depressions within the M series were found to have breeding obligate species.
And the hydrologic connection isn't between the M series and the L series, right?
That's right. The L series
north.
So the A series does have a hydrologic connection, and the A series also has a vernal pool within it. That's the one that's right on the town line that you see.
Okay.
The L series is shown ghosted within the parking area, kind of that bottom V portion. You can see a little oval in there. That smallest oval is the L series.
Okay. And then the total wetland impacts within Grafton is 0.16 acres, is that correct? Or about 7,000 square feet?
Yeah, so it's 0.16 acre feet. That's the volume that we'd be 0.16 acre feet, and we're proposing to replicate 0.17 acre feet. Square footage wise, I think I don't know, it's close to 7,000 square feet.
560, I think. 69. And then is the replication clay lined, or did I read that it's going to be lined with some sort of synthetic?
So it's proposed to be both clay lined, and then there'd be a membrane between a non-woven geotextile fabric.
All right. I think that's it for now, Sandy.
All right. Thank you. So
I had one more.
go
quick
for
one
it.
Thank you. Is the applicant also in front of Shrewsbury, and is there any coordination that we have to do for conditions or things along that line or anything like that, Leah, that we've run into in the past with lots that stretch across? Or Sandy, you might be able to answer that too.
It would be wise for the applicant to try to coordinate between the 2 towns and what's going on. And a lot of that is not just the wetlands, but it's also the stormwater. Majority of the stormwater is in Grafton for areas that are in Shrewsbury. So,
Just
I mean, it's doable. It's just a coordination and what Shrewsbury is going to be looking for, and how they look at their impervious area increases on their side, and whether that needs to be taken care of in Shrewsbury. From a practical standpoint, it doesn't. But again, it's really about maybe having a little bit of coordination between the 2 towns to make sure we're all on the same page.
That was my only other thought, because I think the first time in 5 years or 4 years, however been long, and that it's truly been on a split between both towns.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, from a site perspective and site design, it's still one site. The regulatory part of it's split, which can create just some inconsistencies and some potential there for conflict. There shouldn't be really any. It's still the single site, but again, it's 2 different local bylaws and those type of things. So,
If I could add a little detail to that as well. We did meet, prior to submission to both Grafton and Shrewsbury. We had a few joint, meetings with joint staff from the towns. And we had a joint planning board hearing last week too, to kind of get everyone on the same page there as well. So, and we understand that, Ecotech is doing the peer review for both towns' conservation commissions, and Graves Engineering is doing the peer review for both towns' stormwater systems. So at least there's some, there's some coordination there already. Consistency is a better word. Thank you. I think we would be interested as we get a little further along here talking about, and we will have two separate orders of conditions, right? Because we're in two separate towns and two separate files, but I think we would be interested in discussing how we can maybe have similar or the same conditions at some point.
I think that's a reasonable request, and I think to make it to have a more successful project and have a little bit more protection, it would be good that we have similar type of conditions and that one is not competing with the other. So kind of if you could flip to where your stormwater BMP plan is.
Yeah, if you
And
could go
these
back
are
to that slide with the color
yeah.
ponds.
So, and I'm not familiar with the local Shrewsbury regulations. I do know our local stormwater has a preference towards doing LID or green infrastructure. You have some infiltration, they're large, they're not dispersed. So I'm kind of looking from a general and just have a series of questions. And the first one is as far as your kind of employee parking for more passenger vehicles, if that was ever considered to be a porous lot. I mean, you could get rid of some of your basins. You're going to be able to actually, if you've got two infiltration systems shown there, you're going to have a lot better luck meeting your meeting your phosphorus removal if you incorporate some porous pavement areas. I understand why you may not be doing it with the trucks, but I mean, it's a fairly large parking lot. I don't know. I saw the series of handicap spaces. I'm wondering if there's any electric car spaces. I'm wondering from a purely from a site kind of green perspective, if you're looking to do any kind of more common things that are done now with porous pavement. You're looking for any rainwater reuse from the roof. It's extremely large. I don't know if you're doing some other thing on the roof or something. And then just a little bit on even to the point where your subsurface detention system, which means you're not infiltrating north of the building. You have one large one. As I'm wondering if there's any potential to infiltrate. I guess what I'm looking at, I understand your infiltration is located based on soils, but it would be nice to be able to basically decentralize your stormwater. Right now, this is pretty old school pipe to big basin type of 1980s 90s type of approach. Yeah, it's great that you have some soils to infiltrate. You've got one bioretention area. It just seems more like closed drainage system to big basins, surface basins or underground. I'm not seeing a whole lot of nature-based systems here, or any kind of attempt at doing those or taking advantage of, looking at your different materials and so forth. The area of which is in Shrewsbury, I understand of where the fuel is and the maintenance, that's all impervious. It needs to be. I had a question on there, and this would be something I would ask for Shrewsbury, since all of that water is then being discharged to basins that end up in Grafton. I understand that you have a sequence or basically, step system of different water quality systems. That's fine, but I'm wondering if you're going to put a valve on it in case you do have a major spill, and you can look at where the best place for that is. And that concern is more just if you do have an event because you both have maintenance. You already said that's a LEPL and so forth. But just to think about how you would isolate that. But it's more looking at more of your decentralization, looking at more potential of spreading out your infiltration. I get the soils part, but again, it's looking at that, taking advantage of where might be a good location to do porous pavement. You're going to find it's going to be really hard to get your total phosphorus removal, doing street sweeping. We always have issues when someone puts that out there. It's very hard for us to actually make sure that it's done. And to get, I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but if you're looking at 5 or 10%, you got to be sweeping 4 to 6 times a year. And is that really going to happen on a site this size? And how, as a commission, we're actually going to be able to verify that. So those are some of the things. And I understand why you're putting the sweeping in there to get over your numbers to 90%. You may want to be looking at some more nature-based systems to get there. So that's from my perspective, a few steps, actually 30,000 feet above this without getting into a lot of the details is, what are the missing opportunities that would help to meet the intent of our local bylaw, which is LID and green infrastructure. If you've looked at the, proposed changes for the stormwater handbook and DEP, basically, all stormwater in the future will all have to be either LID or green infrastructure. So that's where we're going. DEP's been trying to change these regulations for 5 years. Been on one of the stakeholders committees going through that review. It will not be around for another whatever. I'm not going to guess when it's in place. Understand that this is being submitted under this particular regulation, but our local regulations really do want to concentrate on an LID approach and more nature-based. So that's where my curiosity is how you're going to do that and what opportunities do you have on a site like this. Tremendous amount of impervious being added. Having said that, it is what it is. We'll review what we have in front of us. But, looking for a little bit more creative stormwater management on the site as opposed to what this very broad kind of colored diagram shows at this point. So that would be my where I'm going to be focusing on is just what can we do to more closely mimic the natural drainage on this site, and how do we get the water back in the ground and be a little bit more decentralized. So that's kind of my viewpoint on that, and it's really just things for you to think about and understand of the different constraints on the site. And as far as you're meeting the zoning and everything else like that, you're using every inch of this site. So it is what it is, but you need to be a little bit more creative on protecting the wetlands and the recharge and the stormwater on the site. So that's kind of my 30,000 foot kind of look at the initial kind of looking at this site. So, as far as next steps, obviously we're still waiting for DEP number and their comments. I'm sure you're going through the MEPA process. I'm just curious where you are with the MEPA process at this point.
We're actually not going through the MEPA process with this project. We don't trigger any state permit thresholds.
You're getting no funding, which that makes sense, but you have no state permits on this site?
Correct.
Even with a fuel station?
There's no state permits that
Okay.
are subject to the subject matter.
Okay. All right. So other than that, it's basically it's basically we need to have you request a continuance. Obviously, we really can't do anything until we get a DEP number and we have the peer reviews in and so forth. So, but it has to be the applicant that actually requests that. At the same time, what I will do at this point is just open up if anyone in the public has any comments or questions. Please let us know. We're happy to listen to them. Jan, if you can monitor that, and so the question for you is do you want a continuance?
We will be requesting a continuance.
And do you want a continuance to our next meeting, which is July 16th, or something more in the future?
We'd like to come back in July. I know with this particular evening here, we actually just came from the Shrewsbury Conservation Commission meeting at 7, and we got continued to the 16th then as well. So I think if we're going to be on the same evening again, we'd like to coordinate that as we did with this one. We appreciate that, you know, being kind of having that little separation. And you guys actually did I can't believe it was down to the 30 seconds. So kudos to
Yes, that's on
timing that
staff.
so well.
Yes, that was on staff, and beautifully planned, but not really anticipated. But that's okay.
So I think as we sit here, we'd request a continuance to July 16th, and then we would just need
I mean,
to
this is going to
coordinate
take.
that.
Yeah, this is a very large project. There's going to be a lot of review going on to this, and just as kind of a a little bit of what Leah said about the phasing plan. Just because we've had problems in town with unfortunate erosion control issues and mud rivers and things like that. We do have that 5-acre max. We also understand that this is a larger project. You're not going to totally be able to come up with 5-acre little patches, but again, a phasing plan and a pretty robust erosion control plan. We understand this will need a SWIP. We don't review the SWIP, but we'd like a copy of it, those type of things. More, it's any kind of SWIP or any kind of erosion control plan is a live document. It changes as it goes, but it's really to your point where you were, thinking about phasing, thinking about how you're going to subdivide the lot, and the best way to kind of do erosion control on a site this size without simply putting perimeter, erosion control around the perimeter. So, but those will need to have further discussions on that. So, Leah, am I missing anything else, at least for this first meeting?
Nope, you covered it.
Okay. Does the applicant have any questions? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, we do have some members of the public with their hands raised.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead and pick the top one and have them be elevated, and we can listen to them.
Sure, I'm gonna promote Brian to talk.
Okay. So, Brian, you are muted at the moment. Whoops, are we having issues there, or he's not?
Yeah, looks like he's still muted.
So, Brian, we can't. Oh, there you go. Now you're unmuted.
Oh, hello.
Hi. Could you give your name and address to begin, and then please ask any questions?
I'm sorry, it's just a little bit of technical difficulty. I'm not sure if you're able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Angela Achu, and I am a longtime resident on Nelson Street in North Grafton. Because we're in a Zoom meeting, I have several other residents here at my house who are also longtime residents in Grafton. And we've been trying to raise our hands and not get the feedback. So thank you for your patience.
Dan, could you mute John, his work iPad, or John, could you please mute, because we can't hear.
Okay, that seems better.
Thank you.
All right, so Angela, please let us know if you have questions or you just have comments, or you have the floor.
Thank you. Our comments, I'm sorry, here's the feedback. Our comments,
We're not hearing any feedback, so.
okay, good to know then. Our comments here as concerned Grafton residents is that we're very familiar with the wetlands. Many of us have lived in our neighborhood here. My family has been here for over 70 years in the Nelson Street neighborhood, and for the abutting parcels in Shrewsbury, my family has been in the area for over 100 years. We're very familiar with the wetland area, and we're concerned when we look at the plans to see the possible vernal pools. We're familiar with these vernal pools because many members in my family and in the neighborhoods have hunted in these areas. This land was in a trust. Most of the land was in a trust, and the trustees allowed hunting on their property. So one of our requests is that we've looked at the documents and we're asking that what's labeled as a possible vernal pool, that the landowner move forward with having those vernal pools further investigated and having them certified. We're very concerned about the amphibian life that's there, and we're concerned about the endangered species around there that rely on the watershed. They rely on the vernal pools. We have a lot of concern about the bulldozing down of the trees and the vegetation and what's going to happen with a lot of this impervious surfaces with stormwater runoff, this stormwater management plan that we're seeing. We're very concerned that we're going to be impacted here as residents, and that our infrastructure, our current infrastructure in town, is not going to necessarily be equipped to handle all that is coming from this particular site. We see that there's 287 trailers that will be here, and many of us have attended the planning board meeting, the dual one for Shrewsbury and Grafton, and we look at that truck washing bay with a lot of concern. We realize that it could be up to 300 gallons per wash per truck coming through. We're concerned about the chemicals that are used. We're concerned about the phosphates coming into the wetlands, and we're concerned about ultimately how that's going to impact the water quality around that area, not only for the wildlife, but for all of us as residents. We all need water, and this is one of our natural resources that we just aren't getting enough information in these presentations. And I think that you've adeptly hit on many of the issues that the residents have for concern regarding the stormwater. Quite honestly, we're shocked to hear that the applicant is not pursuing a MIPA process. That's just alarming, at the very least. That is not even entered into a phase. We've looked at the notice of intent that was filed, and there were no other alternatives that the applicant sought, despite the fact that they have an existing facility not far from this location in Shrewsbury. So that's another concern. For all of us as residents, we know the harm in this area that's come from the truck washing bays that are up the road from the Nelson Street neighborhood, from discharge of fuel oil into Windle Pond, into Bummett Brook. And so we have seen the devastating effects of that in our neighborhoods and within our communities. We have a high rate of cancer in our community, Parkinson's, multiple diseases that we are very concerned about. We've also had many of our animals, our dogs, that have been impacted with cancerous diagnoses from going into these bodies of water and drinking in them. So we're very, very concerned about stormwater management. We're very concerned about what the plans are there, should there ever be a spillage of the fuel And again, alarming to hear that the applicant is not going forward with a MIPA process. So those are our.
Just to help you and clarify, I mean, I asked the same question.
Mhm.
So just to explain what the MIPA permit and how it's set up. So there's two parts of it. There's the jurisdictional part, and then you get into the thresholds. So the first thing you have to do is meet jurisdictional. So there's two general areas of what puts you on the jurisdiction of MIPA, and one is financial support from either the state or it could be a grant. There's a whole wide variety of what financial support is, but typically, I'm just going to use an example of something like the Grafton High School that got money from the state. That's automatic jurisdiction for MIPA, and then you go to the threshold. In this particular case, there is no financial support from the state on this particular project, and that can all sorts of incentives, economic incentives. It can be grants. It can be a wide range. The second part of the jurisdiction is state permits. So just to clarify, the wetlands permitting, even though it's a state regulation, is administered through the local conservation commission, is not considered a state permit. So other state permits that you might think of, would be a Mass DOT access permit to a state highway. And to be honest, I don't think Route 20 in that area is a state highway, but if it was, you may need to have an access permit. That would be a state permit that automatically puts you into the jurisdiction side. Once you're in jurisdiction side, then you look at the threshold. And this particular project would exceed several of those thresholds. It would exceed the transportation component of it. It would include the impervious. It would include alteration area. So there's all that. But if you don't have jurisdiction, i.e. financial support by the state or state funding, or you don't have a state permit, they're not in jurisdiction. So that's kind of that's the way MIPA works. And obviously, I was curious about it, and we'll probably look into that. But if there is no jurisdiction, no MIPA permit is required. Just as an FYI, feel free to look into that more yourself. So
Thank you.
And, as far as some of the other things that you listed, obviously with the Conservation Commission, anything to do with the wetlands, i.e. the vernal pools, they happen to be in Shrewsbury. It is pretty standard, and I'm sure you're going to the Shrewsbury, Conservation Commission. Typically, if we have, potential vernal pool, we will make it part of our order of conditions that it needs to be certified. So that's fairly typical. In this particular case, based on this presentation, those vernal pools identified as potential are all in Shrewsbury. So that's gives you a little bit on that. As far as any kind of impacts to the wetlands, potential impacts, obviously anything within 100 foot of the jurisdictional is assumed to have potential impacts to the wetlands. It is up to the applicant to demonstrate that there are no impacts to the wetlands based on kind of based upon what the different aspects of what can impact the wetlands and all the different functions that it has and so forth. So that's up to the applicant to demonstrate they're not adversely impacting any of the wetlands. Stormwater there's a separate stormwater report underneath the Conservation Commission jurisdiction that has some minimum areas and so forth. This project exceeds all of that, so they will need a stormwater permit from the commission, and we have a local bylaw that they will need to comply with. And a part of that bylaw is really talking about using low impact design, i.e. green infrastructure, nature-based systems as part of that. And it's just that will also be under the conservation. Some of the other things that you happen to list here, although, totally legitimate, may not fall under our jurisdiction, just so that we're clear on what's under jurisdiction or not. Things like the truck washing. So we're interested only in the component of how it may impact the wetlands. There's other considerations on that. That is, the truck washing has to meet certain DEP regulations, has recycled, and all that water cannot be discharged to the site. It has to go to sanitary. But your questions, you should keep asking those questions, because it's one thing to say this is what the regulation says, is another thing to make sure that it's being executed. So that just gives you a couple. I would also make a suggestion, to continue to come to these hearings, and if you want to, actually, put your concerns in writing so we can have it part of the record. And if you have any other questions, happy to answer them, or if there's other folks that would like to express other things, if they would simply give their name and address, they can actually add to whatever you've just said. And let me know if you have any questions on that.
Thank you. We will do that. We will put our questions in writing, and we will continue to attend the meetings. Just one item has been mentioned from the group, is that one of the vernal pools is located in the Grafton area of the property. And so that's the one that we are most familiar with. This project essentially comes into what we refer to as our backyard. So that is one that we are most familiar with, but I appreciate you pointing out the other two vernal pools we realize are on the Shrewsbury property. And our last point, that when we were looking at the plans, we noticed the 6,900 square foot wetlands fill in, and that it would be backfilled, and it would be used for parking purposes for the trucks, and that the artificial 2,900 square foot, I believe it's around less than 3,000 square foot, basically a give back, is something that we have concerns about as well. So I know that's just preliminary information that's been discussed this evening, but it is something that we will put our questions in writing about and look into more.
Absolutely, we will also be doing that. I mean, that's under the local bylaw. That's an isolated area as defined under our local bylaw. So that is, again, that's something that we'll look at during this process.
Thank you.
All right. Jan, anyone else?
Yes, we have Nicholas H.U. I'm going to promote him to speak.
Hello.
You could just give your name and address, and then please proceed.
Yes, you can hear me just fine?
Yes, we can.
Outstanding. My name is Nicholas H.U. I'm on Cluj Street in Shrewsbury. And you as the Conservation Committee, excuse me, I think we have concerns essentially about the wildlife the most and what the area back there is being used for. Growing up in this area, I'm the third generation to live here. We grew up literally using those backwoods for fishing, hunting, riding, ATVs, all kinds of things. And since they put in the development, which is now called Holt Street, that's pushed the wildlife that was already there significantly forward from the Shrewsbury side into the Grafton side, which pushes it into the Nelson neighborhood. I mean, that alone, the amount of wildlife that's back there, that I don't feel like that part is being documented, as well as the wetlands are clearly an issue. But I think that this entire project, there has to be a better place suited for this. The fact that there weren't alternative sites as far as areas with urban blight that they could redevelop, I think that those should have been the major consideration. I realize at this point, people have spent enough money purchasing land and lawyers and everything else that we're pretty much past that. But hopefully, speaking to this committee here, that these objections can definitely be taken into consideration before any final approval is given. I believe the stormwater was brought up as well, which is obviously a concern. Anything that's any type of water or runoff that's being put into this environment is very impactful and hurtful for the neighborhood surrounding it. With the truck stop that was next to us being Flynn's truck stop, not to name names, but there's a truck stop there as well as UPS vehicles there. I mean, that runoff alone coming into the neighborhood, into Wendell Pond, has drastically affected that area. And it's only been in recent years that it's been able to be cleaned up some. And I feel like with this new development being put in there, it's gonna have a major impact on that entire back area. I think that the site should have been looked at to be conservation land, if not for some other better use. I'm wondering if when you guys look at this, was that taken into account really, that what this entire area was previously used for, and essentially how long that there hasn't been anyone back there? There's been
So,
nothing, uninterrupted wildlife.
so as far as, as far as like the property and, why couldn't it be preserved and those type of things, the reality is as a conservation commission, we'll see the projects that are placed in front of us. As far as, having someone buy it so it could be used as open space, if someone had the money, they could do that. It's, that's property ownership. And as you said, people buy and sell, and they bought this piece of land. They have the right to develop this according to the local zoning and so forth. Our role, especially in the Conservation Commission, is to look at what is presented in front of us and to make sure that it meets our requirements, that it does no harm to the wetlands and there's no impacts. And also in this particular case, because there's over more than an acre of disturbance, we will also be looking at the stormwater management. Obviously, with a site this large, with this amount of impervious, there is potential impacts, um, to downstream areas and so forth, and that will be looked at very closely. I think you've already probably heard tonight some of my concerns about what to look at and so forth, but um, we can't really ask for alternatives on other sites. We don't have the regulatory requirement to do that. However, that does not mean we're not going to look at the site. When I hear an applicant say, well, we made this fit in and have the best fit, well, it's only because of how big the building is and how many parking spaces is. I don't, this is, don't mean to offend anyone as conservation, on the Conservation Commission. um, I'm not really worried about how many units you have, how many parking spaces you have. My concern and what our purview is to protect the wetlands, and therefore it's, I'm not going to question the number of parking spaces, but I can question the amount of impervious and what that runoff does impact, and how is that being treated and mitigated, and is it sufficient, and what happens downstream, and specifically what happens potentially to the wetlands. So that's kind of our jurisdiction. We don't have the opportunity, um, under the Conservation Commission, under the Wetlands Protection Act, to have the applicant actually look at other sites. We just don't have that. That's not in our purview. However, we do have every right to look at what's proposed in front of us, and make sure that it is not impacting the wetlands, or in this case, the stormwater downstream, and making
Of
sure
course.
we're meeting requirements. So that's just kind of clarification.
Yeah, I'm talking about weighing, when you're looking at the impact, as the Conservation Committee looks at, we're weighing the impact of what this proposed building is going to do to it. I mean, even if you were to use best practices and you were to say, all right, we're gonna be able to clean up 90% of the water runoff that this building uses, there's still forever chemicals that are gonna end up in this water. And I think looking forward, we don't want this site to be a future Dawn commercial where instead of washing off baby ducks, we're washing off our pets and ourselves. I mean, this is a real concern.
Understand the concern, and obviously we will be doing what we can underneath the regulations that we have. I absolutely want to make sure that, um, that we do our part and make sure we enforce the regulations that we have. And that's like the key thing. That's what we're going to do.
Okay, I think most people are concerned when they hear that it's UPS and the UPS trucks, just the type of building that's going in. It's not just a large building automotive creates its own set of problems and cleanup. So I think
Absolutely.
all the neighbors have very valid concerns that obviously we don't want the area impacted any worse than what we've dealt with for generations here. So these are our concerns. We hope that they're taken into consideration before any final approval is given on the land. Oh, but before on the proposed bill.
Correct. And I would also recommend that you put these concerns in writing and actually send them to both towns so that we have it on record.
I'm right. I straddle the line, so absolutely, I have to do both sides, Shrewsbury and Grafton.
Not a problem. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else, Jan?
No one else with their hands raised.
Okay. So I will just, you will continue to chat, but if anyone else raises their hand, please let us know. We're happy to listen to them. And I would encourage any of the public, please, your concerns, whether you understand specifically if they're wetlands or not wetlands, put them in a a letter or written thing and submit it to us so we can have it on the record. Going back to the applicant, and talking about the continuance, you've already indicated that you're looking to continue to July 16th, and I'm just talking a little bit in case anyone else in the public wants to raise their hands and comment on this, give people that opportunity. And I would urge the folks that are listening in to us that this is the first of probably several meetings that we'll have. And the next meeting would be on our next scheduled meeting on July 16th. Having said all of that, I would go back to the applicant. Do you have any other questions for us at this point?
No, appreciate your time and accommodating, the schedule of both towns once again, and we look forward to coming back on the 16th.
Yeah, and this will be a continuation, and we'll be able to coordinate the timing of it and so forth. So, quick once around for our commissioners to see if there's anything else. Any other questions, Jonathan?
Nope, no other questions.
Emily?
Nothing additional, thank you.
Travis?
No, nothing else.
Very good. I have nothing else. Anything else to add, Leah, before we do a motion
Nope.
to continue? Very good. Do I have a motion to continue? And you're really lucky because it's 1 minute towards 10, and we all turn into pumpkins at 10, so you're ending just in time. So do I have a motion to continue this hearing until our next meeting?
Move to continue the hearing until July 16th.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Travis?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. See you in about a month.